During the summer of 1850, a Scottish Presbyterian immigrant by the name of John Smith took ownership of land just north of a freshwater creek, known at the time as Grant Creek, which intersected Main North Road, at the time the main thoroughfare highway up into the mid-north and the copper mining region of South Australia. John Smith was a smart businessman and set up a homestead on Main North Road during the summer of 1850 to take advantage of passing traffic and bullock trains. By 1854, Smith had purchased more land and had become the largest landowner in the area, with sections of his land being surveyed and subdivided in 1854 for his new township. Soon after, building started commencement on a regional centre that would come to be known as Smithfield. Before John Smith's settlement, the entire region between Gawler and Salisbury was simply referred to as the Adelaide or Gawler Plains. The town of Smithfield was based on Adelaide City and used a gridiron street plan. John Smith donated the land in the centre square, known as Augusta Square at the time, to the Presbyterian Church, who set up a Scottish church in the centre of town. Like much of the history pertaining to the Adelaide Plains prior to 1950, there is very little on record about this small church, but we do know that it was knocked down sometime in the 1970s. In May of 1877, John Smith commissioned the building of a school, which was to be built by the funeral directors by the name of Taylor and Forgie. It was traditional at the time that funeral directors would also provide carpentry and building services, and Taylor and Forgie was awarded the grant to build many of the buildings in Gawler and Smithfield, some of which are still standing to this day. Payment for the building of much of Smithfield was subsidised by the state government at the time. By the time of the 1880s, Smithfield was a fully fledged regional hub, including many services such as a blacksmith, a butcher, telegraph station, and an institute building. A postal service, operating under the name of Gawler Plains General Post Office, opened on the 12th of July 1850 and was renamed Smithfield in 1855. That same year, construction began on a railway line from central Adelaide to Gawler, reaching Salisbury by 1856 and Gawler by October 1857, with Smithfield the only station in between. Around this time, Smithfield Station was not yet referred to as Smithfield Station, and still retained the name of Gawler Plains Railway Station. A station building was built to the same plan as North Adelaide Railway Station, and a wheat store, built by John Smith, was constructed opposite the train station on Anderson Walk at the same time as the station was built. That wheat store is still standing today, and is currently being used as a law firm's regional office. The coming of the Adelaide to Gawler Railway had been important to the town of Smithfield. The Smithfield Railway Station was open 24 hours a day, and had a resident station master and 4 staff. The farming community had kept staff busy loading and unloading sheep, cattle, and bagged cereal crops to and from the district. Many of the old cottages in the township of Smithfield were owned by people who worked on the railways. The railway even built several cottages where the station masters and other workers could live. When the station building was closed in 1975, it was leased to the Munapara Council by the State Transport Authority and was used by a youth employment group as a training base for young jobless. When they moved, the building was left vacant and was heavily vandalised. The council was faced with huge costs of repairs and updating facilities, and at the same time found no new use for the building. Despite the station being placed on the National Trust Heritage Register in May 1978, the building was demolished in June 1987. During the early days of World War II, the Commonwealth Government embarked upon a major expansion to manufacture munitions. 4 munitions factories were constructed in and around Adelaide: a small arms factory at Hendon, a foundry and rolling mill at Finsbury, an explosive and filling factory at Salisbury, and a magazine area at Smithfield. The Smithfield Magazine was built early in 1941 on a 530 hectare site about 5 kilometres north of the Salisbury explosive and filling factory. It functioned as a storage area for the Salisbury factory's munitions project, including Cordite, TNT and Nitrocellulose. The site was located on the corner of Curtis and Andrews Road, MacDonald Park. To service the magazine area, a short branch line running almost due west was built, stretching from Smithfield Station along Davoren Road. The railway was used to transport munitions during World War II from the Salisbury-Smithfield munitions area back to the main railway line at Smithfield. This branch line was closed around 1961, when part of the depot was closed and the land sold for subdivision, with the last remaining tracks from this line being removed by the end of the 1970s. Donald Norman Buckby owned the Smithfield Chaff Mill, located near the Smithfield Railway Station. The 3-storey galvanated building functioned as a chaff mill for about 20 years between 1918 and the early 1940s. Buckby was a former resident of near Smithfield who had sold his property and was now living with relatives in the township of Worsley's when he suffered a nervous breakdown and was brought into Dr. Dawes' private clinic in Gawler for treatment. One evening on the 30th of November 1920, the doctor was called out to Smithfield and gave Buckby the chance of a spin in his 1908 Dion Bouton, one of the first motorcars in the region. Upon arrival in Smithfield, Dr. Dawes left Buckby in the car with the driver whilst he, accompanied by the nurse, went into the home of Mr. Hales. Buckby appeared all right, and getting out of the car told the driver that he would return in a few minutes. He then went into Mr. Hales' stable. Dr. Dawes was away about 10 minutes, and on reaching the car, at once asked for Buckby, who had not returned. It being dark in the stable, Dr. Dawes got Mr. Hales to secure a lantern, and together they entered, the horses giving a clue of something untoward having happened by snorting and exhibiting fear. Buckby was found suspended from a post by a coupling strap around his neck. During the time that John Smith was using the Gawler Plains area for agriculture, he purchased an elephant. One story has him purchasing that elephant from an Indian trader and naming the elephant Tommy. Another, more likely story is that Smith purchased the elephant in 1854 from a Mr. T. Bentley, the licensee from the Cremorne Hotel in Unley. Bentley was facing court charges over the mistreatment of the elephant and wanted to get him off his hands. The elephant, named Jumbo, was only 5 years of age at the time, and as an elephant's lifespan is much the same as humans, Jumbo was a playful youngster. Bentley had put Jumbo on display in his tea gardens next to the hotel, or used him for pulling a plough. However, Jumbo often wandered the district, getting into trouble pulling washing off the line or playing with water. The reason Bentley had been called to court was that Jumbo had picked up a trunk of wet plaster and sprayed builders working on the hotel. With this, they chased him and hit him with their shovels. On the 24th of May 1855, The Register newspaper makes note of the elephant's arrival at Smithfield. It is uncertain what Smith used Jumbo for, but it is possible that he was used to build dams and divert Smith's Creek. Smith's son, also named John, remembers leading Jumbo to and fro to raise and lower buckets to draw water from the well. He was also put to work to pull a plough, and even though he did both jobs well, he was too slow, and Smith sold him in 1855 to Mr. Matthews, licensee of the Jeps Cross Hotel, for £300. The Matthews family renamed Jumbo to Tommy. Matthews used Tommy for giving people rides, dislodging bogged vehicles, and in log pulling races against bullocks. Sadly, Tommy died at just age 9 after being left out on a cold and rainy night in 1858. The site containing John Smith's barn and Tommy's stables is still standing today and is registered by the Australian Government as an historical place. Unfortunately, most of the original buildings that were once utilised in Smithfield for commercial and residential use have now been long since demolished, and new buildings have been built in their place. Some buildings still exist and are used by the community today, while some others are left abandoned and in derelict condition. During the English and European migrant boom of the 1950s and 60s, Smithfield was increasingly surrounded by new housing developments. The areas of Smithfield Plains and the rapid development of the new satellite city of Elizabeth began to encroach upon Smithfield, and the once regional centre was swallowed up by suburbia. During the English and European migrant boom of the 1950s and 60s, Smithfield was increasingly surrounded by new housing developments. The areas of Smithfield Plains and the rapid development of the new satellite city of Elizabeth began to encroach upon Smithfield, and the once regional centre was swallowed up by suburbia. By the time of the 1990s, Smithfield had more or less been swallowed up by suburbia, and the once rural town had now become a suburb of the city of Adelaide. Advancements in motorcar travel had now made Smithfield's roadhouses and hotel motels more or less redundant as travel layovers. The simple way to explain the current situation is as the cars get faster, the longer you can travel and the further out you can go. So small towns such as Smithfield, surrounding the city of Adelaide, slowly become suburbs and will now not be required for anything other than just residential purposes. As of 2020, Smithfield has a population of around 2,500, which is nearly triple of what it had around 50 years ago. Unfortunately, this same story is all too common amongst regional towns that once abounded in the Adelaide Plains.